Needed a bit of a psychological boost, so I've got together pretty much everything that needs finishing now. On the left hand side you've got the compound head, which fits on the front of the ram. There's the two gibs which fit to that piece. That one's bent like a banana, that one's pretty badly worn, so I need to decide what I'm doing with those. The rest of them are part of the linkages for the feeds, the support for the box, the jack for the box, all the bots and bits. So I cleaned them all down, got them ready to paint up. Main issues in terms of not straightforward putting back together relate to, that's the clamping bolt which clamps the ram to the yoke, and it's bent like a banana. It is a 3/4 inch Whitworth thread. Mine's a metric lathe without a imperial conversion, so I've got to come up with a cunning plan to make a new one of them. You might recall from an earlier session, the handle on this, which is the slide adjust, is seized. I want to get it off because I can't actually easily read the graduations on there, and I want to be able to, and it needs a good clean up. I've tried jacking it off with the brass nut that sits in there, but it don't want to move, so I think it's going to be a case of chucking this up and then machining that off, drilling it out, and then make up something to fit on the end of this. The shaft itself, the lead screws got some pretty chewed up areas on it, and it's noticeably thin in cross section towards the middle, so there's a significant chunk of wear. Again, it's a bloody imperial thread. I think this one's 8 threads per inch on a 5/8 diameter. That's for a locking screw, so I don't think it really matters. I'd like to try and keep the machine imperial. Anyway, yeah, so that's that. That's the gib strip out of the compound head. It's only a piece of flat steel, so if it does need replacing, it's no big deal. That's seized. I can only rotate the head here by blows to either side, so I've got to take that out. It's an oddball thing, but it's got a crosshead, and when I've looked at it, I've tried going in from the back, and I've drilled and tapped it, put a bolt in, tightened it up with the view to, as that bolt tightens in, it should unwind this. It hasn't done, so I need to do something to extract that and then make a new one. Best I can establish, when I have managed to get this to rotate round, it goes free when there's the least area of contact. I've stoned off the areas I can get to, but there's obviously something still not quite right. I'm beginning to wonder whether either this or that has got a slight bow to it. The slide areas obviously all want re-scraping, so that's these two, and then into the dovetails there, and then the mating piece on the that fits at the front of the ram. So they'll be the final bits to be scraped. I'm having a break from it for a week or so while I get everything else sorted, or best I can. That's my main concern. I could just put it in as it is, but I won't be happy with it. That's less of a concern, just a pain in the arse that I can't get the threads right. So I've got to pick myself up a split die and then do a partial thread, which will be out 1 thou per pitch, so I won't go full depth, and then I'll clean it up with the die. And the rest of it's just painting up. Cross slide is stripped and ready to be painted. I've not stripped the red on the inside, mainly because I've been giving it over a coat of white spirit or mineral spirits. It ain't coming off. I've wire brushed what I can on the end of a drill, and that ain't coming off, so I'm going to use it as a base coat for another coat of red. Everything else has been stripped back pretty much to casting, and then the scrapeways have been taped. So there'll not be much of a video out until I've got most of the stuff painted up and ready to reassemble, and then I'll probably do a reassembly of the cross slide, and that I need to fit that gib or clamp strip to the bottom to make sure that I've got a nice contact area. Having stripped the paint off, it's flash rusted, so I've got to sort that out as well. And then probably there'll be either a 2 or a 3 sequence scraping that in, and whatever I decide to do with that. So still plenty to go at, and then of course we've got to get the motor back, which is currently down at in Leicestershire. So it's a couple of hours drive down, pick it up, come back and fit that, get some new belts on, get the guards on, rebuild that lot, and then I'll be lucky if I can try and get the thing just cycling without the yoke attached, to bed in the bearing for the main bull gear and the pinion gear, and then fit the yoke up, attach the bull gear, I don't know what you call it, the bit we had all the fun with the bronze build up, that, fit that, get that running, get the yoke, get the ram moving backwards and forwards, and set the gibs. So yeah, this is really just a sort of brief update. I'm going to get on with some undercoating of those bits, so while they're drying, start looking at the next thing to do. Well, we've added one oil point which fits just inside where the gib is, and you can see the scratched channel. I've not took it all the way to the edge because I figured it's just going to run out that relief. And on the other side, and a little tiny button there which will sit at the back there, and then traversing at the back there. I'm not thinking it's going to be something that's going to be oiled every day, because the dams, the felts on the end should hold the oil in, and then there's going to be some dribbling out there and down the back, but there's a reasonable reservoir behind that lot. So another job done. Still got to decide what to do for that section there where the T-slot's been. I really need to work on my left arm where it's had a crack. Somewhat gorillas used it and overly cramped it. It's not actually broken, but it's not broken out, but it's beginning. My thoughts are to put a cap head in somewhere, but there ain't a lot of meat to aim at. It's got to, obviously the cap head's got to be in that kind of area. So I don't know, I'll have to have a think. Drilling it's going to be a pain in the ass because it's I'd have to try and probably do it on the mill. Don't know, I'll have a think about that one. Well, we're at the lathe. We've been pissing around with the gear settings to try and get 10 TPI, so we can make that. And I'll put away my sample piece. So basically we've got a piece of mystery metal, as they call it. We're going to turn down this to this shoulder and then put the thread on, and then check that it goes into the other female, just to the nut if you like. Bring you back when it's going. I've taken half a mil per side, so that's 40 thou total material removal per pass. Running at 840 RPM, brazed carbide tip, and that's the kind of chip we're getting. The dog's not too chuffed because every now and again one chucks its way over towards her. So we're cutting it dry because I don't like the smoke. Bring it back when we roughed it down. So we've roughed it down with 3/4 of an inch. I've necked it in there because yeah, I wanted a bit of run out for the thread. We're hitting the thread dial indicator on the same point at A each time. My scratch pass shows it's 10 threads per inch. We're up and away, so bring you back when I've cocked it up. Like that. Bollocks. Well, I fucked it up completely because I can't hit the fucking A mark. Excuse the French. So we're going to have to slow it down. And again, you twat. Right, well this ain't working for me. So basically when I'm trying to hit the thread dial indicator, I'm going before and after it, which has just chewed up most of that surface, which is annoying. And these carbide tips which I was given don't like cutting slow, which means grinding my own 55-degree pointy tool, which is going to take me fucking ages. I will persevere with this, but I'm pretty sure now it's bollocks, to use Double Boyce's phrase. Yeah, pretty sure it's bollocks. I'm sticking it in back gear because ain't working, and I hit A each time then. Right, here's what we've found out. The metric thread dial indicator on A, as long as you don't bring it out of mesh, works fine. If you disengage the half nuts, come back to your position, and even when that thing comes back round to A and you clonk it in, it's not necessarily picking up the same point on the thread, which is a bit of a conundrum. I can only assume it's to do with the fact it's got 2 gears on this, so it could be, it maybe needs to be on the other one, or something else. Anyway, that's knackered, so we're gonna basically turn some more stock off. I've got another a couple of inches in the chuck, and I need 2 inches of thread, so I've got enough there, so hopefully I'll be able to get it through. But yeah, bit annoyed, but you live and learn. I've never done imperial threads on the metric lathe, so it's a bit of a learning curve. Well, after quite a bit of cocking about with the gearing and then finding out that the thread dial indicator doesn't work if you're not using the standard gearing, I used the half nuts fully engaged and just kept reversing the lathe until I cut the thread, which meant I had to have quite a bit of run out because it don't stop so quick. Anyway, that's the blank. Just need to cut the square on the end. I've checked it into the hole it fits in, which is there, and it screws in nicely and tightens up all right. It's around about, the pitch on it is around about 1 thou out over 1 inch. The hole's about 1 inch deep, so it's not a million miles off. Having said that, when I take the original one, which is, as I said, bent like a banana, probably as a result of me dropping it when it was on the hoist, the tap won't line up with this. That's running out, so I think that's stretched as well. So time well spent. The only thing I'm the only thing I'm marginally concerned about is I don't intend hardening it. It's decent quality steel, and I shall see how it holds up. If it needs something doing later to later date, then maybe that's what I'll do. But my torch would take about 3 weeks to heat that up. I really want somebody with a furnace or oxyacetylene. Anyway, so a bit of a clean down on the lathe, and then take a look at the cross-slide lead, well, the lead screw from the compound head. Well, we've machined the flats onto the ram clamp. I was going to video it on the shaper, and we're setting it up, and got halfway through the first cut, which was on that face, and the part rotated a touch. By the time I'd realised, it had taken about half a dozen swipes at it, so I ended up doing it on the mill. I can't get I've tried this before, trying to cut squares onto the end of shafts. There seems to be there's too much tool pressure pushing it that way, so it either wants to rotate or bend. I guess the other way of doing it would be to cut it vertically. Didn't think about doing that. Anyway, that bit's done. I can live with that, I think. No, my luck, it'll be probably face me every time I come to use it. There we go. You live and learn. We've done a bit of painting. Not my favourite bit. Dog's positioned itself in the most inconvenient position, and I'm going to go and have some lunch and then have a bit of a tidy up, because I'm sick and tired of moving around stuff. Right, we're setting the stall out for doing the lead screw on the compound head. So that's the old one with a chewed up thread, badly, well, pretty worn in the middle, and chewed up at the ends. Anyway, having cut the end off, it's knackered. My lathe is metric, so it cuts metric threads in, which are given in millimeters pitch, and it's got a couple of change gears on the back. So you've got a stud gear, an idler, and a screw gear which feeds the gearbox. So by changing that and that, I can get different combinations. If I had the 127 and 135 compound gear, I could cut exact imperial gears, or American style. Anyway, some very clever guys sit and do the maths, and I ask a dumbass question because my maths never seem to add up, and they tell me that a 48 stud onto a 45 on the gearbox and then position C8 will give me a pitch of 3.64, which is an error over the 3.175, which is what I would need for 8 threads per inch. Gives me an error of 0.011 per pitch. The optimum closest one is this one, but it actually makes the pitch slightly bigger rather than slightly smaller. I'm not entirely sure whether that's going to be any better or any worse, but in terms of, if you multiply the error per pitch up to give you an inch of thread, you got 1.5 thou on that one, 1.7 thou or 1.3 thou, 1.7 thou and 3.4 thou. So I'm discounting the first one, and I'm going to try both of these. So 46 tooth onto a 54 or a 50, and then different gearbox positions. I need to verify that I can actually get that, just check that it is giving me 8 threads per inch, and then order a tap to make a new one of these, because the threads on that, considering they're supposed to be an Acme thread, they're a bit sharp, and it wobbled like buggery on there. So a couple of options I'm looking at for that. I'm looking to see, could I drill that out and then put a sleeve inside it and thread the sleeve. That's 30mm. My hole needs to be 6mm. You want that imperial, it's a 5/8 thread, and that's something like 1.1 inches. So there ain't a lot of meat left, but I just happen to have a piece of inch diameter brass bar, so I could make an insert. I could make a couple of them, drill it out and just press it in, and either solder it or Loctite it in, which would be a doddle. If I'm making them, I could make 2 and have a spare. This one looks like it's some kind of bronze. It's certainly a completely different colour to the brasses I've got. So that's where we're at. Yeah, so they're the change gears. I'll try and get it set up and bring you back once we've got something nearly there. Well, we've failed miserably at getting 8 threads. I can get 8 within 8 thou per inch using a 46 on the stud, 45 on the gearbox infeed, and then position C2. But it gives me, for 8 threads, I'm getting 8.5 thou more, so I'm losing a thou on each pitch. So I've decided to change everything. Found a nice setup to give me 6 TPI, which is handy for doing the nose of the spindle. I've got a 9 TPI. Anyway, I've gone back to doing the 10. I could do the 9, but that just seems bloody oddball. So I've set it up, and when I measure it with a 6-inch scale, I can't see any obvious difference. So I'm going to work on 10 threads per inch, which is a little bit finer. It means I've got to make a new graduated scale. I can either buy a Acme tap, or I could stuff through a Whitworth tap and then make myself a finishing tap with all the same settings. I haven't decided which way I'm going to do that yet. yeah, a lot of messing about, a lot of changing gears, and quite a bit of frustration. But I don't see a lot of point in setting it up so that when I turn my dial for I don't know, an 1/8 of an inch movement, I'm getting more than that or less than that. Not having gone to all the work of trying to get all the slides sorted out, I want at least to have the tool feed reasonably accurate. On the other hand, I could just spend I think it was 150 quid for the compound gear, and then I needed 4 other gears to give me all the ratios possible. It was over 230 quid for the setup to enable me to run imperial threads on the metric lathe with the metric lead screw. Or I spend 130 quid on a set of DP gear cutters and make myself some gear trains, which I might do one day, but at the moment I want to get this done and move on. So I'm going to have a cup of tea and decide which route to go, whether I'm going to cut this first or try and do the bushing first. I might do a mock-up of the bushing and see whether I need the tap. Tap's only 20 quid versus a metric. The other option was actually cut all of this as just metric and stick something like a 5mm pitch lead screw in, but you can't buy a 5mm Acme tap. You have to buy a 5mm trapezoidal tap, and they're anywhere between 80 quid and 120 quid just for the bloody tap, which I'm probably only going to use once. So yeah, getting a bit silly. We're just machining out the bronze nut with the shape across compound slide, so that we can insert a piece of brass to then recut the thread. Final spring pass. Drilled out what we could, but we never end up with a round hole when we drill stuff, so I'm just taking off about 20 thou with I think we've done 4 or 5 passes on it. Gets your ears. So that's 2 spring passes it's had with that setting. It's not going to be a bearing surface because it's just I'm probably going to Loctite in the piece of brass, so that'll do. I'll just check the dimensions either end with my telescopic gauge and call it done once they're within a thou. That was a bit of a wrestle. Just tapped out the Acme thread, so that's 5/8 by 10 Acme. I messed up earlier when I said in an earlier clip that I'd ease the tap through by putting through a standard Whitworth. 5/8 Whitworth is 11 TPI, not 10. So that plan came crashing down. So I drilled the hole at 12.5mm and then put through a 1/2 inch reamer. The shaft on that tap, which appears to run to the bottom of the flute, the shaft is 4 thou under 1/2 inch, so I figured 1/2 inch hole would be about right, given a bit of clearance. Anyway, we'll know once we've done the screw. So turn that up. I've now got to make a mandrel that's a nice snug fit. In theory it should be 1/2 inch. Stick that on the mandrel between centres, and then I've got to turn the OD down, leaving a flange, and then that assembly will then press into that and be Loctited in, and everything should be perfectly aligned. Maybe. Still machining the mandrel. when we measured the ID of the Acme thread inside the nut, it's 535 thou, which is 35 thou over what it was reamed at. Don't know why. Anyway, always pays to use a longer piece of stock than you initially think. Getting down to size here. Like all good plans, this one fell apart ridiculously early in the scheme. I made up the slug. It did have a top hat on it, or an outer ring flange which would butt up against that face. Unfortunately, it all went a bit solid when I was pressing it together, and rather than risk bursting this open, I mean, there was 1.5 thou interference, so it should have pressed in, but heated that up with a hot air gun, couldn't get it anywhere further through, so put it up in the lathe, turned it off. Nobody will know except for the video evidence. Anyway, so for the sake of what, I think it was £1.30's worth of no, not even that, 80p worth of brass, it saved me buying a 15 quid lump of phosphor bronze, and I can easily make another one of those now I've got the tap. Of course I had to spend 20 quid on the tap, so it's actually cost me 25 quid roughly. Anyway, next job is to grind up a tip that will cut me the mail, the thread, and then put that in. And what I'll do is I'll have some practice cuts backwards and forwards just to make sure I get all my feeds and that sorted out, then turn it down to its diameter, cut the Acme thread, flip it round and do t'other end. That's the plan. Probably will change. These things generally do when they start going wrong. That's about 20 minutes hand grinding on my bench grinder. Scribed it out. I've copied how I'd seen Greg do it at the shed, where he's basically sharply marked the back of his tool blank and then draw on the angles and ground to the lines. It's all right, apart from my my scribers don't scribe very well, so I had a good route about and found, well, whether that's an engineer's scribe or what, but it seems to be a carbide tip, so I managed to get a line with that I could follow, and then burnt my finger every time I started grinding. Hey ho. When you look at the close-up grind on this cheap tap, it is rough as a bear's rear end. Cut all right though. So I've just got to do a bit of fettling with that now on a diamond stone. I'll polish the top and hone it, and then I'll just hone the sides so they're flat, because they're not perfectly flat. And I don't know whether the camera will pick it up because it's not a very good surface to try and focus on. You can just about see the lines. I haven't ground to the lines, I've ground parallel to them to bring it down, but that point still sits 10-15 thou out of the bottom of that thread, so I know I've still got to take something out of the sides just to thin it up a bit. But we're getting there now. Don't know what's happening with the focus.